So feel free to reach out to her at any time if you have any direct questions. When you do go to nextleveljobs.org to apply, you will receive a connection to Kim once you have made that application. So at some point in time, if you apply, you will get connected to Kim throughout this process. So I'm going to turn it over to Kim to talk about some exciting changes that have happened within the Next Level Jobs program. And again, please use the Q&A to ask questions throughout the presentation. Thank you.
Good morning, everyone, and good morning to Chad, and thank you for that welcome and that introduction. I also wanted to thank Chad and his team with the Economic Development in Wells County, also Colton's team in Adams County Economic Development, and of course, Aaron with the Wells County Chamber. So appreciate the opportunity to be here today and to speak with you all about these exciting changes with the Next Level Jobs program. So let's get started. So to give a little bit of an overview on Next Level Jobs, this is an initiative that actually started back in August of 2017 through Governor Holcomb's office. In June of this year, the governor's workforce cabinet temporarily expanded this program through Indiana's initiative, the Rapid Recovery for a Better Future, which is funded through the CARES Act. Under the brand Next Level Jobs, there are actually two different products or programs that you might hear about. One is which is the Employer Training Grant, which we'll dive into today, which is specific to employers training employees. And then the Workforce Ready Grant, which is for individuals. As Chad mentioned, you can find more information on nextleveljobs.org or reach out to me directly. I do want to let people know that if you visit the nextleveljobs.org website and review some of the FAQs or employer information, a lot of the information I'm sharing today is not reflected fully on that website because this is a temporary expansion to the program. So to give a little bit of backstory about the CARES Act, $15 million of the CARES Act fund was allocated to the Employer Training Grant, and they have the state Department of Workforce Development has also put aside about $5 million for minority, women, and veteran-owned businesses. So the Employer Training Grant, also known as the ETG, offsets the costs employers incur and provides reimbursement to those employers who train new or existing workers in the state's highest demand jobs and sectors. I do want to stress new and existing workers that you're offering any training to. This is a very common question I get from businesses. It's important to know that when this program first started out in August of 2017, it was for new workers only. That actually changed about 3 to 4 months after the program initiated. So it is for existing workers as well. So the state has identified the jobs and sectors as being advanced manufacturing, building and construction, health and life sciences, IT and business services, transportation and logistics, and the agricultural industries. However, not listed on this screen, there is also a temporary expansion to offer employer training grant reimbursement dollars to businesses outside of these sectors if a product is being produced to help reduce the spread of COVID-19, such as personal protective equipment, hygiene products. So if you're an organization that is not in one of these industry sectors, but you are creating hand sanitizer or producing hand sanitizer, the training that you are doing for those creation of products could also be eligible for this reimbursement. So the Employer Training Grant Program offers reimbursement to employers for the cost of training up to $5,000 per employee, trained again for new or existing workers. A temporary change under the CARES Act fund is the cap has now increased, which used to be $50,000. It is now $100,000 per employer. The requirements are very simple. Again, it must be job skills training that ties to an in-demand occupation, and it needs to be at least 40 hours. If you are choosing to use a third party or another training institution, you can use what the Department of Workforce Development calls the eligible training provider list, which we can talk through if that's something of interest at a later time. Third party providers, so if you're using a training institution to come in-house, or you're sending your associates to a offsite to do any sort of training, that could be covered. But most commonly when I work with businesses, is the training that's for existing in-house training or proprietary training that's specific to the organization. If you're training existing workers, the state would like to see a wage gain as a result of the completion of training. And this kind of varies. So normally this is a company specific question. So if you're questioning or concerned about this wage gain, we can certainly talk through that. So in summary, if you're training your workforce, you should certainly be taking advantage of this program. If you're not sure if you qualify, just apply and let us determine whether or not you're eligible. So the ETG process is very simple, it's very quick, it's very painless. First and foremost is starting by filling out the quick application by visiting nextleveljobs.org. This should take you about 3 to 5 minutes. It's very simple, basic information about the organization and the type of training that you are looking at implementing or that you're currently doing within your facility. Whoever the point of the contact is on the application will receive an introduction email from Department of Workforce Development that just welcomes you, thanks you for applying for the program, and also introduces that point of contact to me. So that's when I normally step in and really help companies through the next parts of the process. In that introduction email, you will also be requested to provide HR job descriptions for the positions that you are putting through training, the salary range for those occupations, and then a training plan will be requested. I want to encourage you not to get held up or get concerned when you hear the term training plan. Most companies that are doing any sort of training already has a training plan. You just might call it something different. A lot of times I like to, in manufacturing, for example, you might have standard operating procedures, work instructions. If you're ISO certified, you have that training checklist that you need to have in order to keep that certification to show your auditors. That would all satisfy the training plan requirement. So we can talk through that if you're not sure if you already have something developed. Once those items are completed, you'll send those back to me. And then I actually take a look at it, just make sure it satisfies everything that Department of Workforce Development wants to see on the training plan. And then I send it down to Department of Workforce Development requesting it be reviewed and approved. Once approved, DWD will issue an agreement which summarizes the details of the training, summarizes what your per person reimbursement amount would be, and then the total amount per company. That's typically, once it gets sent down to the state, I normally tell businesses about 3 to 5 business days, but they've actually been turning these pretty quickly. So they've been actually turning within 1 to 3 days. So it's not a very long process at all. Once we have all that information to send down to Department of Workforce Development. If you have not utilized this program in the past, we will then ask for a W-9 and direct deposit information, which I would send you the forms to complete. And then once 40 hours is completed or your training is completed, and we can talk through when's the appropriate time to submit your invoice, we would have you complete that invoice and submit it for processing. And the payment to the employers is a net 35, but typically it's turned and direct deposited much quicker. So again, if you've taken advantage of this program in the past, there have been a couple temporary changes. Previously, there used to be a 6-month retention requirement in order to receive reimbursement. That has temporarily been waived thanks to the CARES Act. As mentioned in the previous slide, invoice submission can now occur after the trainee has completed 40 hours of training. So it's very quick. Once they've completed those 40 hours, we'll start working on the invoice so we can get it submitted and processed and in your bank account as soon as possible. All invoices for the employer training grant must be submitted by November 30th. And I try to tell companies that this is the Monday after Thanksgiving. So my personal suggestion would be to have these invoices submitted prior to whoever's creating the contact or creating the invoice or the company contact leaves for Thanksgiving break. Ideally, maybe a couple of days before that Thanksgiving break, just so it gives us time to review it, make sure it satisfies everything that their accounting department is going to want to see, so we can get it submitted while everybody's enjoying some turkey. If it's not submitted by this deadline, it is possible that the reimbursement will not be processed and you might not get reimbursed. There is a possibility of what is being called the general fund with money, but there's no guarantee that that general fund will be around. And it's possible that there will be restrictions, including how the program has historically run with the 6-month retention. So just put November 30th on your calendar so we don't forget. And I will certainly send reminders out to those that have not submitted invoices as well. Just keep in mind that the funding is only available for a limited time, and I can speak from personal experience just in our region alone. This money, the $15 million, is going fast. So sign up as quickly as possible if you haven't already done so. So just a couple of points of reiteration. Short-term temporary changes to how the program has historically ran. We talked about those today. Making sure that the 6-month retention requirement is currently waived. You can submit reimbursement as early as 40 hours of training is completed. Again, this funding is going fast, so we want to get you locked in as quickly as possible. It is a very simple and painless process. There is no catch. I get that question quite a bit from companies. What's the catch? There is no catch. We want to make sure that you are getting the support that you need and the resources you need to continue skilling up your workforce. Myself, Chad, Colton, Aaron, we're all here to support you, provide guidance or answer questions throughout the process. So please do not hesitate to reach out. And of course, start now by applying at nextleveljobs.org. So that concludes the information that I have. I'm going to turn this back over to Chad. So if there are any questions that I can maybe answer today, otherwise, this is my contact information. Feel free to reach out if you do have any questions that we are unable to answer today. And I look forward to working with you soon.
All right, so we do have a few questions that we're going to ask. Again, if anybody has any additional questions, please use the Q&A portion. So I'm going to go into the first question that has been asked. So the first question is, what if I currently have an open contract under previous funding rules?
That's a very good question. And this is where we might have to speak offline just because there's some specific questions that's kind of included in that. So it just depends on what your agreement term dates were or currently are in the previous program years. If for some reason you are unable to get the training completed in and under those previous agreement terms dates, then what I would strongly encourage you to do is go ahead and apply under the new program, which is being referred to as 4.0, and we can capture those individuals that are currently in training that you had anticipated putting on the invoice for the agreement that you had received previously. So that way we can get it under the 4.0 and still get that reimbursement taken care of for you.
Okay, the next question is, are employee hours or training hours able to be included in funding?
We may have to ask for some clarification on that. So employee hours and training hours, is that referring to the wages?
So while they're in training, can their hours or wages be covered as part of the funding?
Great question. So a lot of times if it's proprietary training or in-house training, the cost of training per person, I always tell companies to factor in any cost that's incurred. So that would include your employees' wages, even your trainers' wages. If it's in manufacturing, oftentimes there's some downtime, there's some scrap. Those are all costs that are the employer incurs. So certainly include all of that in as being the cost per person for training.
Another question is, when does the reimbursement start? Is it at the start of the contract date, or can it cover training that has been started before the application and contract date?
It would really just depend on whether or not the person is still in training. So for example, let's say you got approved and you got issued the agreement today. If that individual is still in training, we would use today being the start date of training, because that's what's being reflected on your agreement. So you could still get reimbursed after 40 hours from today's date, if that makes sense. Does that?
And it would retroactive cover any training from the beginning of the year.
Correct. It would not be retroactive. We would want to capture as much as we can so you can still get reimbursed. Because if they started training in January or at the beginning of the year, and they've continued training throughout that course, throughout the course of the last 6 or 7 months, there is a very high likelihood that your cost incurred is actually more than $5,000. So we can still at least try to get you that reimbursement for $5,000.
And what is the short-term time frame for the temporary changes?
That is currently the 4.0 that expires, the invoicing that is required to be submitted by November 30th. So we want to get employers locked in now, because once that funding has been obligated, then it stops. The turnaround, actually, the CARES Act funds are good through the end of December, but we are asking all employers to submit the invoice by November 30th so we can have those payments out by the time the CARES Act dollars expire.
Okay, so that concludes the current questions that we have received. We will kind of hold for about another 30 seconds to a minute. If anybody has any additional questions, please ask them now. Otherwise, we will conclude this presentation. So we'll hold for just a moment to see if anybody has any final questions. Otherwise, we'll conclude. Again, if you have any direct questions, please feel free to reach out to Kim. Her contact information should be on your screen. Should you have any questions specific to your organization. Again, we would encourage you to go to nextleveljobs.org to apply. Whether or not you think you may or may not have an organization that fits within the in-demand jobs, they will certainly look over your application. They'll look over the training plan and what you're going to be doing to make sure that they can find a way or to determine whether or not your organization will qualify for that funding. So please, I would encourage you and encourage any of the other businesses within your your industry that you know to please go and apply. As we kind of say, this kind of money doesn't come along very often, and there's very few opportunities to get training funding through different programs. So after the end of this year, we have no idea whether or not Next Level Jobs funding will continue or be fulfilled again. It is a legislative fulfillment of funding. So please apply as quickly as possible. Please apply and consider utilizing those funds. Don't wait, because if you wait, you may not have funding available by the time you need it. So again, there's not been any additional questions, so we will go ahead and conclude. Again, if you have any questions, please reach out to myself, Chad Klein at Wells County Economic Development, Aaron Pribble at Wells County Chamber, Colton Bickle at Adams County Economic Development, or feel free to reach out to Kim Temple directly at Northeast Indiana Works. Again, thank you for your participation, and we look forward to working with you.